to the Pro Life Gen News for today, Friday, June 9th. I can't believe we are already well into the way of June, but I wanted to come and wrap up some of the news from across the country that caught my eye today when it comes to the pro life movement. Don't mind my fighting puppies in the background. All right, so the first piece of news I want to share with you is that the North Dakota House has passed a near total abortion law with very limited exceptions. What was interesting, though, is somebody you may have not have heard of has actually entered the GOP primary race. He is the North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. I hope I'm saying that right. Of course, it doesn't really matter because I don't think he's going to be in there long. But anyway, so North Dakota is a very pro-life state. They have had for a long time an abortion facility operating in Fargo, Red River Women's Clinic. That has been put out of business. Sadly, it just relocated across the border to Moorhead, Minnesota, which is like really right across the river, because Minnesota has some of the most extreme. They're like California when it comes to abortion laws. No one like expects that, but Minnesota is terrible when it comes to abortion laws. But what's interesting about North Dakota is the governor recently this week said he's entering the Republican primary, which okay. I guess one more. I mean, at this point, I should put my hat in the ring. But he said something that really is concerning. He actually said that, he supports a ban prevention act of abortion in North Dakota, but he doesn't support a similar nationwide law if he were elected to the White House. And I think it's very simple. If you can only be pro-life at the state level, then you don't really have any way, shouldn't be talking at all about serving in the federal level. So it's not good news when it comes to North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. I don't even know what's going on there. I've never met him. I've never seen him, but doesn't sound like a pro-life gen candidate that we want to support. All right, next article I want to talk about came up in The Atlantic. You can't read the full article if you don't have the subscription. But this is an interesting headline. Don't forget the other half of abortion, Europe's abortion compromise. So the beginning of the article talks about how, sadly, with a lot of these GOP elected officials saying that they're advocating for a 15-week or a 12-week abortion prevention act, they're actually trying to get America's abortion laws in line with Europe, which, as we all know, will allow abortion in like over 94% of the cases. So that's not good. So as a pro-life movement, we should never be advocating for a 20-week, a 15-week, or a 12-week abortion prevention act, because majority of abortions, 9 out of 10 abortions, happen in the first trimester. So if you're not really banning and preventing abortion in the first trimester, you're not really doing a whole bunch, and certainly not doing all that you can to save the most vulnerable in our world. So this article talks about how as these GOP officials move towards 15 and 12 weeks, they're bringing America's abortion laws in line with Europe. We fought a whole war so we wouldn't be Europe, and we wouldn't have to have their crappy laws. So I don't know why we're trying to emulate that. It's not a good look for us. But what was interesting about this article was they were talking about the socialism of these European countries and how these European countries actually support women and families when they have their one child. They're not even having more than one child because we're under replacement value and Europe is far below replacement value. So it's an interesting discussion, something we certainly have lots of discussions about here in the United States about how to support women and families in need, but how to do it without resorting to socialism, because socialism always kills. Socialism always leads to communism, and it always leads to death. So that's not a good look for us either. All right, next article is a Politico article. So Politico wrote this article, "Why the hell are we doing this? McCarthys Fracture leadership team faces new abortion tension." So my question is, why the hell do we continue to allow pro-abortion Republicans to rise in the ranks of the Republican Party. So the Republican Party has for years said, we're a big tent, you can have a lot of different views on abortion, and you can join our party. The Democrats don't allow that. Like, if you're not ideologically aligned, supporting abortion up until the moment of birth, from conception to cradle, essentially, and taxpayer funded, they will actually campaign against you in the primaries. They will do everything they can to stop you from advancing, not the GOP. So the problem is the chickens come home to roost. So in McCarthy's leadership meetings on Capitol Hill, you have the South Carolinian Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who's trying to make a name for herself. She's going to lose her seat because her district was redistricted. And it's a former Democrat seat. It's going to go more than likely going to be turned back into Democrat, because to be honest with you, I'm not lifting a finger to help her get reelected at this point, because she's doing all that she can, going on national TV, slamming the pro-life movement and saying that Republicans should stay away from the abortion issue and we shouldn't do the right thing. I'm hoping Nancy Mace gets censored. The Republican state senators that failed to advance the Life of Conception Act in South Carolina, which are now, we got a Heartbeat Prevention Act passed, but not what we originally intended, which was a Life of Conception Act. Some of those senators are actually now being censored by their local GOP committees. I'm waiting for Nancy Mace to be censored. But anyway, so McCarthy's got a leadership issue because the centrists in the party are giving him grief over abortion. They now were even earlier this week, they didn't want to bring up a bill to vote on that would strengthen the Hyde Amendment, which prevents federal taxpayer funds of abortion. I mean, this is how extreme they are. This isn't even moderates on abortion. These are people who are just pro-abortion, that they may pretend that they're pro-life when they go back to their districts, but in Washington, D.C., they're certainly not pro-life at all. All right, I'm going to end on this story from PETA. So PETA calls for the Belmont Stakes, which is the last race in the Triple Crown, to be postponed because of the air quality concerns, the Canadian wildfire. The Belmont Stakes is in New York State. They actually did end up postponing the practices and the race for the horses. But I would just say, PETA, don't forget about water quality. Sadly, the smoke from the Canadian wildfires is out of our control, but we can focus on something that is within our control, and that is the corporate and FDA-sanctioned dumping of chemically tainted blood, tissue, and fetal remains into our waterways every day. Fetuses, human beings who actually are tainted with active metabolites that harm the reproductive lives of fish and animals, and maybe even humans. We should be able to all agree and call for a postponement of, flushing babies and chemically tainted blood and placenta tissue down the toilet until this could actually be researched, because it's already been admitted that the FDA just hasn't been researching it and they don't really care to look. Yeah, maybe PETA will join us. I know they're probably mad about my hamburger eating video from yesterday, asking them to join us. But, I'm just saying, I would be more than willing to give up eating meat if PETA would actually join with the pro-life movement to call for, at the very minimum, stopping dumping chemically tainted blood, tissue, and human remains into our open waterways, and calling for the FDA to actually uphold the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act, which they've been violating for more than 20 years with the approval of Mispriston, the first drug in the chemical abortion cocktail. So that's your news for tonight, Friday, June 9th. As you know, it is Friday, so it is loud here at the Hawkins house / Mercer house. We're staying with my parents. Sorry for all the interruptions, timers for the insulin and the dogs barking and the kids taking insulin. But we are very busy here. I hope you all have a very fun-filled weekend, and I'll be back Monday. I'll be coming to you live probably from the Washington, D.C. airport, because I have a pre-important media interview. But we're going to keep these live streams going on a daily basis, trying, a Monday through Friday basis, to keep you updated with all that's happening within the pro-life movement, because there's so much going on right now, whether it's in states or in Washington, D.C., or in communities across the country, that I really think you need to know about. And hopefully that you can take this information, then engage on it on your own social media, in your conversations about abortion going forward. So have a great week.